In this bubbly baba dee doo doo. Greetings, listeners all around the world. You're listening to the Solfeggio and the Seas podcast by Hypnoathletics, exercising your mind. My name is Hakeem Ali Bokus Alexander, and I'll be your host and guide. This podcast is called The Solfeggio Keys to Lucid Dreaming, Astral Projection, and the Afterlife. That's right. The Solfeggio Keys. This is Solfeggio on the Seas podcast, so let's get right into this here. And in doing so, I am going to play SolfeggiOceaniX in the background here. So, SolfeggiOceaniX is the 10th track from Volume 1 of Solfeggio and the Seas that I completed in 2021. It is now 2022, and I will provide a link for this track to use for unlocking lucid dreaming, astral projection, and the afterlife. So, what's the basic premise of what we're going to be doing here and how to do this? So, first of all, lucid dreaming, astral projection, and the afterlife, simply put, consist of sending yourself into the non-physical realm, dimension, world, but this is done, of course, people should know, and if you don't know, if you're new to lucid dreaming or astral projection, also known as out-of-body experiences, or an out-of-body experience, you don't have to die to go into a non-physical realm, of course. So your physical body is still alive, so don't get too freaked out if you're new to this. And the same thing goes with the afterlife, because all of these different phenomena, building these types of skills, are all interconnected. And by learning the different skills that I'm going to share with you, you will be able to have access to lucid dreaming, astral projection, also known as out-of-body experiences, and the afterlife. You will get to see what it's like before you drop this body. Now, that might be a little scary to some, but it's actually a very simple thing. So how do we do this? How do we send our physical bodies, or send yourself? When I say yourself, I mean your consciousness, your understanding, the awareness of you. How do you send that into the non-physical realm, dimension, world? Now, okay, here it is. This is done by causing your personal frequency composite to primarily become symmetrical or more coherent. And what do I mean by that? So there are, and we're just going to talk about the physical and non-physical realms as in terms of technology and as an interface, a way of accessing different things, just like tuning into a podcast like this one. You have to go to a specific web address, right, online, or like the old school television channels, tuning into a particular television channel or radio station by simply tuning into that frequency. And each person has their own individual personal frequency. But this personal frequency is actually a frequency composite, or a combination of many different frequencies. And when different frequencies combine, in such a way from the primary source of all reality, which is non-physical, when they combine, they become asymmetrical. It means that everything is not equal. And asymmetrical frequencies or asymmetrical mathematical information is what gives rise to what we perceive and experience as a three-dimensional physical world. And conversely, by causing our personal frequencies to become more symmetrical, for the most part, because not all of our frequencies will become completely symmetrical, but by causing them to primarily become symmetrical, you take these frequency components, these components or combinations, and strip them apart into individual thought patterns, which each of those individual thought patterns by themselves are symmetrical, which is the key to opening the gate or opening the door to allow passage of your consciousness into these non-physical realms. And people do it all the time without knowing. And this happens mostly to people when they're meditating or dreaming. And you can think about it like this. The non-physical world does not exist in time or space. It doesn't take up any space. If you think about when you have a dream, your dream, as it could be said, exists only in your head, right? But think about it. You can explore many, many worlds and realms and walk through a whole house, a whole city, a whole town, and experience all of these things, but it's not taking any space in our three-dimensional world. It exists as information that you're interpreting as space and time. Just like you can play a video game or watch a show on television or through the internet, and the only space it takes up is the screen that you're watching, while these characters that you're following along in whatever program you're viewing is exploring a whole other three-dimensional world of itself, but it's contained within that space of the screen you're watching. But it really doesn't take up any space at all. It's simply information. And that's what all of the realities that we may experience are. It's our interpretation of information that gives us the experience of space and time. And this physical reality, this 3D world that we experience things mostly in, most of us, is simply an interpretation of information that gives us the experience of space and time. And the same thing happens when you separate from this physical world, which could be considered or should be considered as a shared dreaming experience. But when you disconnect from the shared dreaming experience mostly and go into your own individual dreaming experience or your own individual thought patterns, you enter into another interpretation of information, mathematical information, that takes up a whole new space, or at least gives you the experience of a whole new space when you're having dreams. And a lot of people have recurring dreams. They go to the same spaces, the same architecture, the same structure, and whole new different places. But where is that happening? It's just as if we're just tuning into another channel and experiencing a whole new reality. Now, again, to repeat, this is simply a matter of our personal frequencies becoming more or less symmetrical or asymmetrical, or coherent or non-coherent, ordered or chaotic. So there's many ways you can think about that. And there are various ways to to become, to cause or to steer our personal frequencies to become more symmetrical so that we can open the gates and experience non-physical realities more readily. For example, just as I talked about giving the example that I gave of dreams, for example, this is one of the ways that we can experience these different realities, is our dreaming world. But for one thing, many people do not remember their dreams, let alone become aware that they're dreaming, and then even more so are able to control their dreams. So the first step is to even start remembering and realizing that you're dreaming. Then next, to become aware that you're dreaming, which is lucid dreaming. And then the next step is to then be able to control most of the things happening in a dream, which I call, and some others call, super lucid dreaming. And one of the ways to do that is by listening to binaural beats, such as the one that you're hearing in the background here, which I call SolfeggiOceaniX. As I said, it's the 10th track in Volume 1 of Solfeggio and the Seas. And again, I'll provide the link to that in the show notes for this podcast, where you can download that and listen to it. And it contains not only the 9 different solfeggio tones from 174 to 963, but it also, on the head and tail, the beginning and end of the 33-minute production that it is, it has some gateway tones, which are tones that were reverse engineered from what is known as the Gateway Experience 1 from the Monroe Institute, created by and narrated a guided meditation by Robert Monroe, the founder of the Monroe Institute and the pioneer of hemisync, also known as hemispheric synchronization, which uses mostly binaural beat technology to help people with meditation and out-of-body experiences and things like that. And my brand of binaural beats and isochronic tone productions and frequency formulas is called demi-phase, or demi-cerebral neurophasing, which means the exact same thing as hemisync. Hemispheric synchronization, mine is demi-cerebral neurophasing. It's just me just separating out what I do as my own brand. That's it. It's the same thing. They're binaural beats that help with these various experiences. So that's one of the first ways that you can help and understand the world of lucid dreaming, is simply by listening to these frequency formulas. You don't have to do anything but have the intention of thinking to yourself and having the desire to want to know and become aware that you're dreaming, and then to be able to control them. So simply, you can take this production, you can put it on, you can listen to it, and just think to yourself, by listening to this, I'm going to become a lucid dreamer, or I will be lucid dreaming. I will become aware of my dreams. I will be able to control my dreams. That's a very basic and simple way, more passive way to do it. Even though, a little bit more of an active part of that would be saying those things to yourself, like, I will be able to lucid dream, or I will be able to control my dreams, or I will be aware that I'm dreaming. So that's, those are simple things that you can say while listening to the frequency formula, this demi-phase formula that I created. And you don't even have to do that. Sometimes by just the repetitive listening of these frequency formulas that I've created and that other people have created for the purpose of being vibrational healing or vibrational meditation, simply by listening, at least once a day or a few times a day, eventually the two sides of your brain and your personal frequencies will become more and more symmetrical, more and more coherent, and so that over time you will start becoming more aware of these non-physical worlds, these non-physical realities, domains, dimensions, realms, however you want to call them, right? And so that's one of the more passive ways, is just by listening to binaural beats and the various isochronic tones, like the different solfeggio tones in my Solfeggio and the Seas series, Volume 1 and Volume 2, simply by listening to them, it will help you to open up the gateways into these other realms, into the realms of lucid dreaming, astral projection, and the afterlife. Now, there are more focused and intentional ways of doing this, and one of those is, and I'm continuing with the lucid dreaming experience and the ability to lucid dream, or the skill to develop in lucid dreaming, is a very simple mantra that consists of a question and answer that I call the Lucid Ingredient. And I will also put a link to that in the show notes for this podcast for you to access, to listen to it and to understand it and how to use it. But very simply, it consists of, throughout the day, as you're walking around in this three-dimensional physical world, asking yourself the question, am I dreaming? And you answer, yes, I am dreaming. And you do that several times throughout the day. You can say it out loud or just in your head, and you continue doing that. It's a way for you to be exercising your mind, just as you would exercise your body if you did some kind of movements, going to the gym, practicing a sport or something like that. The more you do it, the stronger your body becomes when you do an exercise. And in the case of asking yourself the question, am I dreaming? And answering, yes, I am dreaming, just as with physical exercise, you adapt, and your memory adapts to this question and answer. And you keep doing that, so much so to the point that eventually you start asking yourself this question all the time. You build up this habit, and it begins to show up in your dreams. And even if you're not at first conscious of it, by asking yourself this question over and over again through repetition, it will become part of your subconscious mind, which you'll start asking yourself this question while you're sleeping, and suddenly you will become lucid or aware or awake while you're dreaming. And that's the first step in lucid dreaming. And again, you listen to that meditation or self-hypnosis exercise that I'll provide the link to in the show notes, and you'll simply see that it is exactly as I said, but I made it into a program that you can listen to help further along and to enhance your ability to embed or implant this post-hypnotic suggestion or this meditation or this mantra, however you'd like to call it, into your subconscious mind, so that it becomes a habit that you begin saying all the time, silently or out loud, whatever's appropriate for you and whenever appropriate, that it eventually shows up in your dreams and causes you to spontaneously become aware that you're dreaming, become a lucid dreamer. And from there, you then can become a super lucid dreamer, where you then start to control different aspects of your dream. And then that's where the next part that I'm going to talk about, to help with the Solfeggio keys to lucid dreaming, astral projection, and the afterlife. And that is something that I sometimes called superhero practice meditation, or if you don't like that, you can call it imaginative role play meditation, or you can give it your own name, whatever you'd like to do, whatever you'd like to call it. So, but I'm gonna, for this podcast here, I'm just gonna call it superhero practice meditation. And here's why, and here's where it comes in as not only a reality testing for the self-hypnosis exercise of the Lucid Ingredient, which I had just previously mentioned, where you ask yourself, am I dreaming? And then you answer, yes, I am dreaming. Then you will reality test. So even though you answer affirmatively, you say, yes, I am dreaming, you have to test that. And how do you test that? And so that's this next part, which I call superhero practice meditation. And so there are different things that superheroes can do that we learn from various different science fiction stories, comic books, and movies. And one of the first things that comes to mind, right, like Superman or various other superheroes, one of the things that astonishes people the most is that they can fly. They seem to be able to defy gravity. So flying, or at least levitating or floating or gliding or hovering, right? This is one superpower that you can practice. And one way to reality test this is after you answer the question, when you ask the question, am I dreaming? And you answer, yes, I am dreaming, you can just stand still and just for a moment, see if you can lift yourself and float off of the ground. Now, in this three-dimensional world that we're experiencing now, most likely, most people aren't able to do that. So, in that way, you'll say, okay, I'm still in this three-dimensional world. I haven't crossed over my consciousness to experience a non-physical dimension. Now, that's just one of them. But let's get more into the details of how you actually what's one of the best, or actually the best way right now, so far in the development of this, of how to practice the superhero practice meditation. And part of it is just like any other meditation, but there's a very specific way to do this. So, first of all, find yourself in a comfortable position, sitting down, reclining, lying down, whatever is most comfortable for you. Some advanced meditators can do it while they're walking around, even with their eyes open. You can do it while you're taking a bath. You can do it while you're standing up in the shower. I mean, there's so many ways that you can do this. Lying down on the beach, it just all depends on what level of meditator you are, how advanced you are in your meditation, and where you can basically imagine things without being too interrupted or interrupted at all by any external influences or stimulus. But most people would like to just relax somewhere where they can sit down, recline, lounge, or lie down. And of course, close your eyes, maybe take a few deep breaths to help calm and relax yourself some more. And then what you do is you select a location that you know from your physical world. It could be your home. It could be some place that you frequent often, school, work, a park. It could be the route to and from work and school, to and from home, to the park. But mostly, I think that it's simplest to start with where you live. And what you do is, as you close your eyes and you relax, what you do is imagine. Most people, as they imagine, they visualize things. They can see images, pictures, mental pictures in their imagination. Other people will use other senses. Some people can physically feel their way around, or some people use sound to get around. Some people have developed their way to be able to use their sense of smell to find their way around, because not everybody in the physical world has the sense of vision or hearing, right? So you can use whatever sense is most appropriate for you to navigate through this familiar dwelling or this familiar space that you know from your physical world. And you start it either in one particular room or at the front entrance, or front or back door, and then you start moving your way through this environment. But the superhero practice part is that you can, if you want to, you can look down and imagine your feet, see what shoes you're wearing or not wearing, if you're wearing pants, trousers, skirt, whatever, a dress, or nothing at all. And you just imagine yourself moving through the space. The superhero part is to imagine yourself levitating, floating, hovering, or flying through the space from a perspective like above, like you're at the ceiling. And this is a lot more difficult than you think. Or it may be easy for you if you're used to doing that. But you navigate yourself through the space. You go through the different rooms. Maybe you go through the whole place, starting from the front door, and then you go out the back door. And that's the simplest version of the superhero practice meditation. That's part one of that. But there are other things that you can do as to practice the different superpowers that you have, right? And these different superpowers, right, are things like telekinesis, which I'll talk about later, is a bridge between the physical and non-physical world, because it's something that you can actually demonstrate for yourself. Telekinesis, at least micro telekinesis you can experiment with in your three-dimensional physical world. But what it consists of, if you don't know what telekinesis, also known as psychokinesis, is, it's moving objects distant from you with your mind. So in your dwelling, let's say you choose your home to navigate through and float through, wherever you start, the first thing you can imagine is, you can imagine without using your hand to push the door open or turn the knob, you just imagine in your mind's eye the door opening. And as you go through the dwelling, you can imagine various different objects. You can look at a chair and just let it float up off the ground and then set it back down. You can imagine a cup lifting up and floating into your hand. You can imagine setting it back down by letting it float away from you and setting it down on a table or the floor or wherever you'd like it to be. And so you can move various objects around by thinking about them moving. You can, like I said, with that chair, you could lift it up, watch it spin around, and then set it back down. You can change its color. So there's different things you can do with telekinesis in this imaginative roleplay meditation that we also call superhero practice meditation. Now, another thing very close to telekinesis in the dream is manifesting. And you can do the same thing with objects that you manifest. So changing color is one of those things. You're changing the color of something, but even more so, you can imagine yourself manifesting, or seemingly out of nowhere, right, out of thin air, some say. You can imagine different tools like a pen or a pencil or a screwdriver, a hammer, a drill, or weapons like a sword, a gun. Anything like that, you can imagine it just manifesting, and it can manifest, a few feet or yards or meters away from you, whatever you like, or a measurement you want to use in your mind. Or you can imagine them just manifesting automatically, instantly in your hands already. And then you can demanifest them or make them disappear. So you can make objects appear and disappear by thinking it. And at the same time, you can combine that with the other telekinetic power superhuman practice, or superhero practice. I think I was using those words interchangeably, superhuman practice meditation and superhero practice meditation, but let's stick with superhuman. Right? So you can manifest these objects into your hand, like imagine that you manifested a book into your hand. Then you can imagine it floating away from your hand and setting it down somewhere, like on a bookshelf or on a table, on the floor, on the chair, or whatever. And then you can imagine it floating back to you telekinetically, back into your hands. You can imagine it disappearing in your hand. You can imagine it floating back to whatever place you want it to, and then disappearing from there. You can change its color. You can do all these various different things in this superhero practice meditation. So, or superhuman. Let's stick with superhuman practice meditation. So, then there are various other superpowers that you can practice, but the main ones we're talking about are, floating, flying, levitating, hovering, those different things like that. Telekinesis, by imagining moving objects with your mind that are at a distance from you. I mean, it could be 1 inch away from you, or it could be, 1 meter away from you, whatever, however you want to imagine it. And imagining objects appearing and disappearing, or manifesting and demanifesting, integrating and disintegrating, right in your imagination. And those are ways of reality testing when you ask yourself the question, am I dreaming? And you answer, yes, I am dreaming. So you can choose any one of those things in your mind when you ask yourself that question. And eventually what happens is that when you ask yourself that question and you are asleep, it will awaken you to the awareness, make you lucid that you're dreaming. And then when you practice one of these superhuman practice meditations in your dream, it serves as a reality testing, because if you start to be able to move objects with your mind, or open and close doors, change the color of things, make things levitate and float, make things appear and disappear, then you have become a super lucid dreamer, And now you're able to start controlling different aspects of your dreams. And that is when you can go on various different adventures. See, now this key here can help you also, and lucid dreaming is just a starting point, but it actually starts with the meditation, because you could sort of think of yourself like an astronaut or a pilot, or lucid dreamers are called onironauts, from the word oniros, which means dream. So an onironaut is a dream explorer, like an astronaut explores the stars and space. And so as an onironaut, or a dream explorer, one of the first things when you start practicing this meditation, it's like practicing how to navigate using the vehicle, the ship, the vessel of your mind. And so that you are able to start doing these things when you become a lucid dreamer and cross over into being a super lucid dreamer. And it's also very helpful when you're able to dissociate from your physical body and have out-of-body experiences or astral projection. And there's several other related phenomena like remote viewing and remote influencing and things like that. But when you're able to start doing that, then that's another bridge into then being able to communicate with other disembodied entities, your inner self, and the afterlife. Because very often we're already interacting with beings, entities, loved ones who've crossed over, their consciousness, their tulpas, their conscious residue, their residual self-image, your residual self-image, different types of memories and environments and spaces and whole different worlds. We're already doing this, but then we're able to explore it much more deliberately when we practice how to move through it in our mind. And like I said, starting with a familiar environment. And for some of you, you'll see how difficult that is to actually move through spaces that you're familiar with. Even though you can, when you're awake, you can just open your eyes and walk in through the front door and into your bedroom or wherever, into the kitchen, into the living room, dining room. But the things you aren't usually able to do are telekinesis, moving things with your mind, or manifestation, of making things form out of thin air, right? So, but these things you can do in other realms that don't follow the same rules as the 3D world that you mostly experience when you're awake. And that's when you know that you're in a spiritual realm. And lucid dreaming is a step into astral projection, and that's a step into exploring and interacting with different entities and beings in the afterlife. So I'm going to leave it off here. There's a lot more that I could add to that, and I will at another time. But again, you can start by listening to this SolfeggiOceaniX binaural beat frequency formula from my demi-phase, one of my demi-phase collections, and that can be a passive way to get you started, just to help you relax more and help you to feel better and help you to calm down and different things like that. But it will lead you eventually into lucid dreaming, which then can lead you into astral projection, which can then lead you into interacting into what is many people know as the afterlife. But one of the best ways to get into lucid dreaming is to ask yourself the question, am I dreaming? And an answer, yes, I am dreaming. And then to practice the superhuman practice meditation by practicing telekinesis, manifestation, floating, and flying, which are things that you aren't usually able to do in the 3D waking world. So that's it for now for the Solfeggio keys to lucid dreaming, astral projection, and the afterlife. I'm Hakeem Ali Bokus Alexander, your host and guide. And please do check out some of the other links in the show notes here to support this podcast, whether it be training with me online or in person as a fitness trainer, self-defense instructor for kickboxing and such, and other ways that you can support the podcast. Thanks for joining me I know that you've learned some interesting things here, and I will catch you on the next wave. Stay well.